Hi there, and welcome to Jumping In. I'm your host, David Buterbaugh, a library associate from the Five Forks branch. Have you ever had a paper assigned weeks in advance only to put it off until the last day? Or maybe you find yourself staying up late into the night scrolling through Instagram or Facebook while you spare a worried glance at your backpack every few minutes. A 2007 study found that procrastination is extremely common. Nearly 100% of college students reported procrastinating to some degree, and it severely impacted about half. If you're here, I take a confident guess that you already know what procrastination is, and that you yourself might procrastinate. If so, you're in good company. Many artists, philosophers, and leaders famously put off their most important tasks until the very last minute, or not at all. Take, for example, Leonardo da Vinci. He is hailed today as one of the greatest minds that ever lived, but during his life he was famous for never finishing anything on time. Some of his most famous paintings took him over a decade to complete, if he completed them at all. He was frequently distracted and drawn away from tasks of major importance by those of relatively minor importance. Now, this may sound like a whimsical genius at work, but he suffered from this tendency. In his last years, he lamented, "Tell me if anything ever was done. Tell me if anything was done." I love deadlines. I like the whooshing sound they make when they go by. This is a quote from the author Douglas Adams, whose most well-known work is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He was task-averse and would delay working by drinking tea and soaking for hours in the bathtub. He put off writing until it was crucial for him to produce something. Then there would be a frantic rush to complete the project. He lived with this habit for his whole life, leaving his last work unfinished. Even the Dalai Lama is a recovered procrastinator. He recalled that in his youth he found it difficult to get motivated and was bored easily. Only in the face of a difficult challenge or an urgent deadline would I study and work without laziness, he said. He now says that one should avoid procrastination at all costs, teaching that a person should take care of their affairs in such a way that they could die tonight and have no regrets. Numerous studies have shown that those who procrastinate in school receive lower grades and have linked delaying the needful to stress, anxiety, and other symptoms. These people and many others have accomplished a great deal in the world and have made a name for themselves despite their habit of pushing things off until the last second, but often at great expense to themselves and the people around them. You can do the same, but without the psychological stress that comes with not doing what you know you should. The first step to beating procrastination is to understand why we do it in the first place. There is an incredibly wide range of reasons a person might procrastinate on something. The causes of delay are as varied as there are people with unique psychologies in the world, but I'll talk about 5 of them here. Fear of failure. The fear of failure is one of the major reasons why we procrastinate. We have an idea about something we want or need to do, often a very good idea, but because we don't know whether it will succeed or not, we keep delaying. This delay could be manifested in never finishing the task or never starting on it in the first place. Confusion about first steps. When we don't know how to start something, we will often find reason after reason to avoid doing that thing. Sometimes, students are uncertain about whether or not they are doing an assignment correctly, and they search and search for the correct way to do it, which prolongs the time it takes to actually start an assignment. As we will talk about shortly, once the inertia of taking those first steps is overcome, the completion of a task becomes much more achievable. Fear of criticism. When we're worried about what people are going to think about the work that we have done, we are more likely to delay starting on that work. This may happen because if we are able to place the blame for poor performance on deadlines rather than ourselves, any criticism we may receive feels less like our own shortcoming and more like a technicality. Task aversion. When the thing we have to do is something we really dislike, we are more likely to put it off until the last minute. This could be because we think it's boring, or that it's something we're not good at so it frustrates us, or that it's something we have just decided we don't like to do. It seems self-explanatory. If you don't like it, avoid doing it. But just recognizing that your brain is going through these processes could be the first step to breaking through procrastination and into productivity. Anxiety. One particularly devious reason we procrastinate is anxiety. If the thing we have to do makes us anxious, we are likely to avoid doing it. Because people are more likely to procrastinate on things that they think are important, putting things off makes us more anxious, which causes us to procrastinate more, which makes us more anxious, and we begin to procrastinate more, and you get the picture. People often procrastinate on things that they think are very important or will have a major impact on their personal or professional lives. But this doesn't really make sense, does it? To understand why it happens, let's take a quick look into the neuroscience of not starting. The answer, it seems, is found in the interplay between two different processes in our brain, controlled by the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system is the system in the brain that is responsible for certain emotional processes as well as our split-second decision to attack a problem versus try to get away from it, commonly referred to as the fight or flight mechanism. It developed early in our evolutionary history in order to help us survive in a harsh world. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, developed later and is responsible for self-regulation and self-control. When we're faced with something we are averse to in some way, our limbic system kicks into action. In all of the examples we discussed earlier, our brain perceives some sort of threat, and we have an emotional response that causes us to avoid it, with the hopes that not thinking about it will make us feel better or safer. The limbic system can't differentiate between internal threats and the threats of our ancestral past, such as a giant animal chasing us. But this is at odds with what our prefrontal cortex wants. It wants us to plan for the future and neatly organize our responsibilities and tasks in such a way that they get done in a timely manner so we can enjoy the fruits of our hard work in the future. So how do we resolve this psychological tension? When we know that we have something important to do, how do we bypass the limbic system and just get started on what we need to accomplish? The good news is, overcoming procrastination is a learnable skill, and with just a little bit of practice and repetition, you will be starting and finishing tasks in no time. Here are a few techniques that I have found particularly useful in my own personal and ongoing fight against procrastination. Mark Twain, a man of great wisdom and many talents, is quoted as saying, "If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first." If you have to eat a live frog, doing it first thing in the morning will ensure that everything that comes afterwards will be pleasant by comparison. So, the first technique for overcoming procrastination is simply to identify what your biggest and most unpleasant task is and start on it right away. The ABCDE method. Make a list of all the things you want or need to do. Include absolutely everything, from finishing an important project, to walking your dog, to doing inventory at your job, or to watching your favorite show. Next, apply the following prioritization method to this list. A tasks are those that have the largest impact on your progress toward your goals. Write the letter A next to the things that are very important and have significant consequences if done or not done. If you have more than one A task, prioritize them further by writing A1, A2, and so on. B tasks are those that have important but smaller consequences. These are things you should do. If it doesn't get done, someone may be slightly inconvenienced, but the harm will be minimal. C tasks are those tasks that would be nice to do but have no consequences, positive or negative, in your current situation. D tasks are those tasks that someone else could do, allowing you to free up more time to work on your more important tasks. In other words, what responsibilities can you delegate to others? E tasks are tasks that should be eliminated. They are either no longer relevant or actively hinder you on the path towards reaching your goals, and they have no consequences when they're eliminated. The rule here is that you should never work on a B task while you still have an unfinished A task. Once you have identified your A tasks, start on your A1 task immediately and work on it until it's finished. Finishing important work causes a rush of endorphins that give you a pleasant feeling of accomplishment and control. There's a big difference in something being almost done versus 100% complete. Set goals. Nothing will motivate you and set you moving in the right direction like clarifying and writing down your goals. Idealize. Think ahead to where you want to be in 5 and 10 years. Write down with pen and paper exactly what you want your life to be like in as much detail and with as much clarity as you possibly can. Determine exactly what you want, determine what it will take to get there, and then resolve to do those things. Next, come back to the present moment and actively take stock of your situation. What can you do right now to move yourself closer to your goal? What one thing, if done well, can have the greatest impact on your life? Break it down. Break your tasks down into manageable pieces. When a large tree falls across the road and blocks traffic, what needs to happen for the tree to be removed? Rather than trying to drag the whole tree away, or lifting the whole thing off the road, the tree surface will cut the limbs and trunk into manageable pieces, and then move those pieces away. Anytime you are working on a big, daunting task, break it down into individual, sequential steps, and then start on the first step. If necessary, you can break down each step even further into its own individual steps. Anything that can be broken down into manageable parts can be completed. The Pareto Principle. The Pareto Principle, also called the 80-20 rule, states that 80% of your successes will be determined by 20% of your responsibilities. This means that we should constantly be asking, what is the most important thing for me to be doing at any given moment? In the words of Brian Tracy, there's never enough time to do everything, but there's always enough time to do the most important thing. Always be asking, is this the best use of my time? If it's not, stop what you're doing and get started on the most important thing. If you have 10 things to do, usually 2 of those things will have more value than the other 8 put together. What 2 activities are most important to you? Often, the largest contributors to our success take the same amount of time as the smallest contributors, but we still put them off more often. Commit to 10 minutes. If you're struggling to start something important, commit yourself to working on it for just 10 minutes. If you work for 10 minutes and still find that the task is unbearable, take a break and come back to it later. You will usually find, though, that once you have reached 10 minutes, the task doesn't seem quite so overwhelming, and you'll want to keep working. Goethe said, "Only engage, and the mind grows heated. Begin it, and the work will be completed." Set deadlines. Don't be afraid to set deadlines for yourself. If you have something that you want or need to accomplish, get a pen and some paper and write, "I complete blank task by blank time or date." If you know the time frame you are working with, your mind will automatically start to sort out what needs to get done to accomplish a task in the given time. This is known as Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the amount of time allotted. Even the act of thinking about finishing your task makes you more likely to finish it. A deadline is merely a target, something to guide and shape your progress. If you miss a deadline, set another deadline. If you need to, look at the steps you have broken your problem down to and set sub-deadlines for partial progress. Those are just a few of the tools that I have discovered to become more productive. Practice them all, practice which ones work best for you, look up new ones, or create your own. But whatever you do, get started and keep going. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you feel better equipped to tackle your tasks, be they big or small. If you're interested in learning about procrastination and time management even more, there's a wealth of information available in the resources offered by the Gwinnett County Public Library, including Galileo and lynda.com. I'm David Buterbaugh. Thanks for tuning in.